Hello, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Rocket Lab Weekly. It's episode 33. Can't believe it's been 33 straight weeks of covering Rocket Lab. And on this episode, we have Dave G Investing with us and Scotto. Thank you guys for being here. Both the guys' channels and Twitters are in the description box below, so please make sure that you guys give them some love. So how have your guys' week been investing wise?
Dave, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Investing wise, not too bad. Obviously, it's been a bit of a fun ride with Rocket Lab lately. So I mentioned in my video that I had sold some $4 puts, received about 1,000 plus 1,100 in premium for that. The stock did actually go below $4, as you're both probably aware. And then I was able to roll it out an extra 2 weeks, and I actually made an extra $280 by rolling it out further. And it just expired worthless. So I just kept the whole premium, 1,400. Then I just turned all that into stock afterwards. So I was pretty pleased with how that worked out. The rest, I tried to capture some losses for tax reasons, because this past year I got hit with a high tax return because of the capital gains. So that was a little rough. Don't know if you guys ran into that. And just holding my stocks other than that.
My week is a lot less eventful than Dave's, it sounds like. I've just been trying to catch up with all the earnings. There's besides Rocket Lab, I'm still trying to catch up on. There's Shift 4 as well, and Lemonade. So I'm trying to catch up with those as well, but I keep getting distracted by Rocket Lab.
I gotta look at those companies. They sound interesting. I've never heard of Shift 4.
I was actually interested in Shift 4 because I was thinking a while back, I'm like, okay, if I really think Starlink is going to be successful, what's a way to play this? And then I remember hearing that Shift 4 was doing the payment processing for them. And I was like, I wonder if that's a way to play like the success of Starlink without being able to invest in SpaceX. But I didn't get very far into research on that. So I guess Scott would be the expert on that company, how material that is to them.
Yeah, worth checking out for sure.
Yeah. I watched some Scott videos to get me educated there. Oh, I envy your Rocket Lab option trading. It's so funny. Like I was for 3 times now on green days. Like I tried to sell covered calls on Rocket Lab, and then I always end up happy that they don't go through, because my big worry is that their options are so illiquid. And I'm like, if we would rally to 6 and I'm underwater on the calls, I'm like, I can't roll them, or and
well, I mean, it'll just get called away from you, I guess.
Yeah, but which is
would that be your full position, or just like part of it that you were looking at selling them?
Because like on Palantir, for example, I do covered calls on the full position, right? Okay. And I've been like, I have gone like, it has gone underwater sometimes, right? But it's so liquid and so easy to roll that it never becomes an issue. Like it just enhances the gains on Palantir. But on Rocket Lab, I'm like, no, if those shares get called away,
that's why I wouldn't like to do it. Especially because we have seen it run up to like $8 before. And it seems to have these sharp rises as well as sharp falls. So I prefer doing the puts.
Yeah, and I had TJ Wheel Deal on my channel, and he's like, yeah, just for your account security, like you could do like covered calls on. And I really thought about it, and then I was like, okay, I try like an October $6 like call. It was like 30 cents. And then I had it for 1 day, and then it didn't go through. And then I was like, okay, cancel. Like I like, if they announce like, new Neutron contracts or whatever, it's so easy that we would go past that price until October. And then, so no way I'm doing that.
Yeah, I'd rather err on the side of ending up with extra shares as opposed to losing my shares. But So.
Me too. I'm with you on that train. So we start the week with Rocket Lab news. I think the first one is like a public service announcement. So if there is any photographers here who feel like going to New Zealand to get a tour of the factory and get as close as you can possibly be to the rocket launch, then you can email Rocket Lab. I kind of regret that I'm not a photographer. It would be doesn't it sound like also the Rocket Lab pays for the trip, like if they choose you?
Yeah, sounded like they would pay for your flight and everything from what I heard. I felt the same way when I was looking at it. I was like, damn, I wish I was a photographer.
Yeah. But from other news, 50 freaking launches. Like it's the more I look at Peter Beck interviews, I'm curious your guys' take on this. You know how Elon always says that prototypes are easy, production is hard. And you know, when Peter says that, yeah, like we can just throw together a rocket and then it's like the same engineers who, you know, produce the rocket, it's very easy because you know the rocket inside out. But making a 50th launch is very hard because it's distant employees who are maybe not even rocket engineers who have to go on a production line. And I'm very impressed with Rocket Lab because all the other competitors, they're still on the prototype phase. And just wanted to check with you guys, like, what is your viewpoints on Rocket Lab having 50 launches and the cadence really getting going and all their experience?
Yeah, I think it's an amazing milestone. It'll be exciting to watch. Obviously, I feel like Electron is now incredibly reliable, and I'm not really worried about any more anomalies. But having said that, I probably just jinxed it. Yeah, and I just think you're right about the production being hard, prototyping, and maybe like making, you know, PowerPoints and animations being easy. And there was someone on Twitter this week who messaged, I think all three of us maybe, and he was like, "Are you worried about RFA?" And I was just like, "Man, no, like they haven't launched yet. They, you know, I think, you know, I'm sure they have all the right intentions, and companies coming online probably really do think they can be profitable at the prices they say they will be. And then they may not realize just how hard the long-term production is. And like, you know, they're pushing for their first launch, but talk to me after like 2 years. Let's see how profitable you are at a cheaper launch than, you know, 7 million on an Electron. So I think it's a great milestone, great vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Especially to what you're saying with cadence, it seems like if we are hitting the 5 launches and if the internal targets that are, well, alleged, if those are accurate, it's like we're really picking up speed on the cadence. And what's interesting, yeah, there it is right there, Vince.
I was preparing with this tweet.
There's actually one past that though. There, like somebody mentioned like the exact dates for the next 4 launches, I guess it would be. And if we're looking at the time in between the launches, it's like goes from like 34 days to 28 to 14 to 11. And
yeah,
one thing that I'm not sure of with that is the status of LC-1A. It seems like it's not going to be online for any of those launches. So that's especially quick turnaround for assuming that it is all coming from LC-1B.
Is there like, it's not a topic I've looked into a ton, but like, what's the story with 1A? Is that one hasn't been used in ages, right?
No, mid 2022 was the last time it was used. And if you look at the, I don't want to say too much here without getting anyone in trouble, but if you look at the satellite imagery, the tanks disappear from 1A for a period of time. And this coincided with some testing in other areas. And now those
very
tanks
mysterious.
are back. Yeah. I'm trying to say it without saying it, but those tanks are back, and it seems like I wouldn't be surprised if 1A is back online right away here.
How much do you guys think that the pads get used? Like, so for like, what I mean is that the way I understand it is they have a hangar where they like assemble the rocket and do the final assembly, and then they roll out Electron to the launch pad, and then the rocket just launches. But they like, is it theoretically possible to just keep launching from like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
I think it's like the infrastructure associated with the pads, like the tanks for fuel and stuff like that, and all the rest. So probably a little bit more to it, but I think they can support a pretty rapid cadence.
Mm-hmm. I think the bottleneck would be the clean rooms.
Yeah, because I mean, like, you know, if you have the 2 pads, it's like really insurance against if a rocket blows up on the pad, then you can still use the other one, right? But if you don't have a rocket blow up and you can just refuel the infrastructure within a few hours and roll up another rocket, then technically there's not such a big use for the second pad, no?
Yeah, but they must have put it in place for a reason, right? If it was that easy. But I do think 1B did have some relatively significant upgrades over 1A because it was built afterwards. But I don't know a ton of details on that. I think that's probably why 1B was being used a lot more.
You guys know that this question actually, like Scotto said that I should ask Peter on the interview, but we like ran out of time because we only had him for a certain amount of time, and
right.
So we did, but maybe in the next interview we can ask this. But it was definitely on the list to get answered.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be interesting to hear. I don't think the pads are the bottleneck right now, but exciting because I think Scott was saying there was some kind of document that did kind of show a potential schedule that, if they can pick up speed, should be good for the rest of the year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. And then next Rocket Lab news for the week is just a picture they tweeted out about the 2 pre-fire missions that are coming. I believe it's within 1 week we're going to see the first. Do you guys know the exact date when the first launch is happening?
The 22nd.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think it's like within 5 days from now.
Yeah, like right away here. Yeah.
Wow. So yeah, that's going to be pretty exciting. And then there was some more posts about Archimedes, and they're really teasing us here with the test. I wish I would know about rocket engines because I thought that they get it to the pad and then they set it on fire and that's it. Like within 1 day we get it. But in this recent interview by Adam Spice, he even said that we fully expect the test to be done by the end of the quarter. And I'm like, how much do you need to test this thing? So
I think there's a lot. There's actually a pretty good Reddit post about it. If you check out the Rocket Lab subreddit at all, talking about the whole campaign, different types of testing, pushing it to different pressures and things like that to see, how far it can go. And, there's a ton of different tests from my understanding. It's not like light it up once. Okay, we're ready to go. Let's stick them on a rocket.
Okay.
Is that testing supposed to be done by the end of the quarter or just starting by the end of the quarter?
No,
I thought it
started. I think it started. Like in this video, you see guys with, I think that's the test stand, and you can see the rocket on it. And yeah, a guy has a computer plugged in. So I guess that's part of the test. I don't know what they measure, but yeah. Cool. Okay, so next is a very, very interesting news that I'm sure you guys have seen. It's actually not Rocket Lab. It's an article that came out about that ULA's main customer is very unhappy and uncertain if ULA can deliver enough of the government payloads. And the reason why this is very, very interesting is because Boeing and Lockheed, they're trying to sell ULA. And the big selling point was that the Vulcan rocket has been upgraded and we have all this government backlog, right? But if the government is unhappy and they already lost a part of their, I think like 6% of their missions went to SpaceX because they were not ready on time. And so I'm curious, what are your guys' thoughts? What do you think is going to happen with this company?
Yeah, a lot of people thought the acquisition would happen kind of by the midpoint in the year. And most people seem to think it's going to be Blue Origin at this point that will acquire it. But yeah, I've never been super bullish on Vulcan. I think, it's just a lot of challenges to get the cadence up. And, they have a tall task ahead of them. The other thing is Dream Chaser is supposed to be their next flight, and that's a certification flight that will then allow them to do these Air Force flights because they need to, they want to see a couple flights to make sure it's safe. But now Dream Chaser is looking like it may not be ready. So now they're talking about having to fly a mass simulator instead of Dream Chaser, which obviously means they're doing a launch with no revenue, which would not be good either. So yeah, rough place. I do hope Dream Chaser can be ready and they can launch it soon. And we'll see how fast they can spool up production.
I don't have too much more to add to that. This sounds good for the Neutron long run.
Yeah, I was just going to ask if you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, I agree too. Of course, we all know Neutron and Rocket Lab really want to get into that NSSL lane 1. They can't get into lane 2 where Neutron does have some contracts. So Vulcan has some contracts. So if any fell out there, it would have to go to SpaceX. But in lane 1, one less competitor. And, potentially Amazon down the line if Vulcan can't fulfill their obligations there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see like these giants struggle, because they are the established players. And it's not, like I understand if they struggle with making a cheaper rocket and, making it reusable because they're the dinosaurs and they have their own set ways of doing things. But I'm very surprised that they even struggle with just getting the rocket to the pad and getting any kind of cadence,
Yeah. I mean, I do want to give ULA a bit of credit because they've had like a extremely reliable track record and they have kind of been the ride to space for national security for a long time now. But yeah, Vulcan just so delayed. And it just seems a little ironic to me how, okay, we have these two companies trying to build these big rockets. They've both struggled with so many delays. And now you're going to combine those two into one company and somehow things will be better. Like, I don't know. They're both very big. They've taken a long time to develop. And yeah, it's just interesting how that will play out.
Yeah. I also wonder in this book that we read by Ashley Vance, about the culture of, we don't know about the culture of ULA, right? But Blue Origin is very like, work-life balance and no stress on schedules and you saw this picture of the B4 engine and all the engineers there, and it was like all old guys, and then the Neutron Rocket Lab, and it was like all enthusiastic young guys that were going. And
that was a Francisco tweet. That was his 15 minutes of fame. I think he's probably still in the chat. But some people said the picture of the Blue Origin guys may not have actually been the ones working on the engine, but it was it felt pretty apt anyway.
Yeah. So I have my doubts with that team. Cool. So the next segment is a very, very interesting segment. So Adam Spice went to a conference, the Bank of America Securities conference about transportation, airlines, and industrials. And I said to my viewers on the channel that I feel you get way more valuable data out of Adam on these conferences because it's not the analysts asking stupid questions that the analysts think is important. It's somehow like he's given the opportunity to freely present the company with certain guidelines from the interviewer. And he didn't disappoint. He made some very, very interesting points. So we can go by a few of the more interesting ones. So here is where he says hot fire test is by the end of this quarter. That seems like an eternity to me. I hope we get that faster. Then the next one, barge landings for Neutron downrange. That's the first one that they're going to be attempting. That was a big surprise. We even debated it here, how they're going to do it.
I was quite surprised as well by that. I figured for sure the first few launches would be return to launch site. But it just seemed like, okay, they're really going to have to get a ship, get it ready to go, try to figure out how to, have the ship in the right spot to land on and all that for the very first launch. But I guess that's what they're doing. So we'll see.
Yeah. It almost sounded like that it has to do with permissions and environmental surveys. And so it's like maybe they don't want to do with the ship, but with the ship, it's like you just send it out there. It doesn't bother anyone. And bringing the rocket back to Wallops, maybe it's, yeah.
What do you guys think, though? Very first time trying to bring it back. They've never done a propulsive landing. They're trying to do it on a barge in the ocean with waves. Like, what do you think their odds are of landing this thing?
40%.
40%?
That's a very high number.
It's not bad, you know. Yeah.
But you know, Rocket Lab, they basically nailed their first Electron launch. It wasn't a mission. It wasn't a mission success because the supervisors that came from the experienced guy, like they made a software error and they had to terminate the rocket. I think the Athia 1 rocket also flew on the first try. And there's many things that Rocket Lab has nailed on first try. So I also think that the chance is very, very low, but I don't know if I would be very surprised if they made it, you know, and it would be like, yeah.
Maybe we're all a little more used to SpaceX's philosophy of like planning to have the rocket blow up.
Yeah.
And Rocket Lab is a little bit more like, let's try to get a first article that can actually complete the mission type thing. But we'll see.
I think Peter even said it in an interview that he said that they are like a mix between SpaceX and ULA, that he said that when it comes to parts, they can blow them up. They are like failing fast with them. But once the parts are tested and they're put together, they're very like they only want to try it if it's going to work. Like they don't want to mess with it because they don't have endless capital, right? Like they cannot afford to So next point. So this was also a very interesting point that he talks about what is in not this one. Okay. I can maybe jump to that point. So Adam Spice mentioned that the business makes satellites and then they sell components to the merchandise market. And he said that the subcategory is going to do 140 million this year. And I wrote to Scott what he thinks about this number, because it like launches are going to do about 160 million this year. The space subsystems is the reaction wheel, star trackers, and if they do 140 million, then we're already at 300 million together. And I think that there is more in the satellites that they're doing than 100 million. So it sounds like we should easily be way more than 400 million this year. But I'm curious what Scott has come up with, and he's better on the numbers than me.
For the full year, I'm at 410 total for revenue. 410 million, that is. Now, I guess there's a couple takeaways. First is the number of satellites, and I realize I'm being a little bit like, maybe I'm looking for something that doesn't exist, but Adam mentioned about 45 satellites in backlog.
Yeah, here.
The reason that kind of stuck out to me is the last known number that we do have is 42. And I'm like kind of splitting hairs here, I realize, but almost, about 45. That to me would be like 43 or 44. I hope that is clear, but I'm kind of wondering if maybe there's one or two satellites that we don't know about yet. Because if you manually track the ones that we do know, we're at 42. So I'm kind of leading into the backlog thing. That's why I'm kind of wondering if maybe there's one or two satellites that we don't know about. But then outside of that, we can expect roughly $250 million for the full quarter, or for the next 4 quarters. And like you said, Vince, $140 million run rate. There's two different ways that I approached the expectations for the backlog, if you will. So the merchant components side of the space systems side of Rocket Lab's business is roughly 56%, I suppose. And if you take the $250 million for the 4 quarters and then subtract the $140 million run rate for the merchant components, you're left with $110 million for the satellite side of the business for this year, or for the 4 quarters, I should say. I'll skip over the CAGR mention for now. The next part that we got that stuck out to me was the kind of isolation of the components backlog. This, to my knowledge, is the first time that Rocket Lab has gone more into detail regarding the space systems backlog. So in a nutshell, 20% of the space systems backlog goes towards the components backlog, or goes towards the merchant components, with the 81% being satellite manufacturing. Now, I'm kind of wondering how to explain this clearly. Of the $650 million for the satellite manufacturing, we know 515 from SDA, the SDA contract, and another 20, roughly 20 for Victus Hayes, right? The whole mission is 32, but then there's that launch in there as well. So I'm assuming the launch is 10 to 12 because it's a bit of a complex setup. So either way, SDA is 515 and Victus Hayes is 20. All this to say is that recognized in 2024, we have, or I guess outstanding for 2024 for the satellite manufacturing, we have a similar number to what we arrived at a moment ago with $115 million. And then the kind of final takeaway from this is that the components backlog of $150 million, we know that 30 million of that is the satellites, leaving us with a max $120 million for everything else for the backlog.
Okay. So and does it add up to you with all the customers that we know about, or do you sense any secret orders that have been coming in?
Like, there's nothing really new here. I guess everything is just kind of like focused in a little better, if that makes sense. Like $120 million for the rest of the components backlog tells me that, well, I mean, it doesn't tell me anything, actually. I'm still just as unclear about the reaction wheels. We do know that
Do you think the reaction wheels are in that number?
Some of it is, yeah. I guess I could, yeah, okay. So yes, the quick answer is yes. And the maximum amount that was added, because we know some reaction wheels, we know part of that agreement or whatever they're calling it, we know that was added to in Q1. And we know that there's a total amount of $60 million added in Q1 backlog, 30 million of which is going to be the solar agreement. So a maximum of $30 million was added for reaction wheels, or reaction wheels plus whatever else. And what else was I going to say to that? Oh yeah, there's a lot of conversation that I'm seeing regarding the pricing of the reaction wheels, and maybe I'm mistaking the quote from Adam Spice, but some people are taking it away that they're selling the reaction wheels for an order of magnitude less than what is advertised on the website. But my understanding from that, where that quote is coming from, is that is the cost that they were able to bring down by an order of magnitude. So we know that the space systems, just kind of like space systems as a whole, it's roughly 30% margin. So if the reaction wheels are being sold for $100 million from the jump from when they were announced, and that 30% margins, that would be $70,000 as a cost for the reaction wheels. So if they're able to bring that down, I guess that would be, what, $7,000 to make each reaction wheel. So some people are arguing, like, I'm kind of more in the middle, but some people are arguing that the reaction wheels could be being sold for a tenth of what is being advertised on Rocket Lab's website, which would, like, I don't know, I guess take the, yeah, I mean, it would take like the 2,000 reaction wheels times $100,000 per each. It would take that $200 million total to $20 million total. Yeah. And that's like, I don't see that either. But again, if the solar deal, the solar agreement was enough of a fuss for them to announce it, that tells me that the reaction wheels should be announced, I guess. But we're still, I don't know, the new commentary here doesn't really shed any light on the reaction wheel situation.
All right. Dave, is there anything that sticks out for you? Because, yeah, they do have an interesting way of calculating backlog, because they announced these, 150 million deal, but only 30 million is calculated in the backlog. It seems like they might have a 150 million reaction wheel deal, but the backlog is not reflecting that. So is there any numbers here that he has given that sticks out for you?
Yeah, I mean, I know we've all been trying to do a lot of detective work on it, but I'm just kind of at the point where, I'll wait and see what the numbers come out when they announce them. And I know it's a product that exists for them, and overall I'm satisfied with how the company is doing. And hi, Russell, thanks for tuning in. Yeah, so that's kind of just how I feel about that one. I do have to say I have not listened to this interview or call yet, and I really want to, because we have the quotes here, but sometimes the way they say things, or maybe if there's something missing, I could take something different from it. So I won't really know for sure until I listen to it myself.
Yeah, it's really worth it. All right, so then the next one that was very, very interesting is that they are expecting between 3 to 5 years to own their own assets in orbit and be monetizing it on recurring revenue at very high margins. So does that change anything for you guys on your valuation? Were you shocked to see that? What are your thoughts about this?
I mean, I think it's bullish. It's especially if you're talking 3 years, that's sooner than I was thinking. And my financial model, I had no, recurring revenue from this line of their business for well beyond 3 years. So probably good news. But on the other hand, it may just mean another ramp up in spending after Neutron's done, whether that's R&D and stuff. So yeah, overall, I think
it's maybe a longer period for us where the stock is just going at $4 because Wall Street doesn't get it.
I think the operating numbers of the company should show, and really, do you want them to just be making a ton of money and not investing it into anything? I think we want them to keep making investments. So this will probably be the next thing after Neutron and should drive the next leg up in growth. So I was surprised and pleasantly surprised.
What is your guys' take? It seems like in the past, we'll call it 3 to 6 months, when they're asked about the constellation, Peter Beck gives kind of a vague answer of I'm paraphrasing obviously, but it's kind of yeah, we're kind of keeping our eyes open, or keeping an open mind, but when it becomes crystal clear, that's when we're going to move on it. And I'm kind of well, if it's 3 years out, when they say they're again, paraphrasing, but they're not sure what the constellation is going to be, do you buy that? Or do you think maybe it's narrowed down to 1 or 2 options on the boardroom, whiteboards, or they must have a decent idea of what it's going to be, right?
I think so. And I think, as we've talked about previously, as soon as they acquire some payload companies, we should get a much better idea. I don't think we're going to see them acquiring people making, lenses or whatever for Earth observation, but yeah, it'll be interesting. I wanted to talk to Tim about this soon, but we'll see how that goes.
I have a theory. So you guys know how Peter Beck said, out of all the things that keep me up at night, neutron demand is not one of them, right? Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask him also in the interview, okay, but then what is it that is keeping you up? And then I thought it was a stupid question, and there was better questions to ask him. And in this interview, Adam Spice actually said that the thing that is keeping them really worried is that SpaceX has unlimited financing, and it's very hard to compete against unlimited financing. So I think that if they would announce that we found a really good business case in this, and in the next 5 years, we're going to launch this, what is the chance that SpaceX is just not going to modify something on Starlink satellites and then just, roll them over? So I think that they have to kind of keep it a secret and not say it. That's my first theory. And then the second theory is that whenever Spice gets asked about, okay, but when do we get a new announcement on, what is the company that you're going to acquire? And his answer is always like, we're having a deal flow, we're looking at it, there's like companies that we're looking at, and we're going to be very strategic. So I honestly think there's a chance that they haven't decided, and they just see that there is like 5-6 companies where they I don't want to say it like this, but they smell blood in the water, that like they're going to have like very tough with the with the capital, and then they can opportunistically acquire them, and then they just go after that. So that's kind of my two theories on this.
I think they know what they want to do. Yeah, that's what I'll say about it, I guess.
Yeah,
they just won't say. And that story, by the way, about SpaceX and having unlimited capital and being able to do whatever they want and like crush up and coming businesses, I think there's some merit to it. There's the story. I don't know if it's completely true, but I've heard that back when Rocket Lab was young and SpaceX was younger, Peter Beck actually had a meeting with Elon Musk and wanted to meet him and kind of talked up the small launch market. And prior to this meeting, Elon was always like, no, we'll never do rideshare. And then after this meeting, soon after, Elon announced the transporter missions doing rideshare for small sats. And people think like ever since that, Peter's just been like, okay, why would I reveal any of my plans to SpaceX? Because they might just try to do whatever they can to,
I wonder about this. So because I was actually wondering about the same thing, like what would have happened if they never have the meeting and SpaceX never announces the transporter missions? Like, would those 100 rides have gone over all to Electron with like 100, like, or do you think that, because I heard that on the transporter mission, it was like 1 million per satellite or something. So it was the cost was like 1/8 of the Electron, but you're not going on a dedicated launch. You have to adjust to everyone else's schedule. So, there's gimmies and gotchas. So do you think that is the price that made it so that they can fill it up with 100 satellites, or they literally took out 100 launches from Rocket Lab's manifest?
I mean, they they would have had no choice, right? So the small sat customers, if there was no rideshare for Falcon 9, unless like ISRO or someone else was doing rideshare. But yeah, I have read some articles recently, I think especially with the new bandwagon missions at a different inclination, saying that like there's really no market reason for SpaceX to price them as low as they are pricing them. I don't know how true that is, but like, if they could get 50% more than they're asking, like why else wouldn't they?
Yeah, I also read this. Yeah, that it sounded like it was deliberately just to get at Rocket Lab.
Well, perhaps other up and coming companies as well, but yeah.
Well. So it's interesting. So I was actually, it was very interesting that Adam Spice said that really keeps them up at night, like competition with SpaceX. I didn't think that, like I always thought that they're in too much of a separate business. But yeah.
I mean, I think they are in a lot of ways, but if you're looking at a company with, as you said, practically limitless capital, because they seem to be able to raise on the private markets as much as they want, if they decide to do what you're doing, it's going to be tough.
Yeah. Cool. Now the next thing, it's not here in the quotes, but if you listen to, they asked Adam Spice, how is the hiring and how do you attract talent? And he said something that I never looked at that angle. And he said that the US companies cannot hire outside talent. So meaning that you have fantastic, French talent, Canadian talent that are rocket engineers, but you have the ITAR regulation in the US. And New Zealand apparently is a place that people want to live in. Like it's very sexy, I guess, to live and work in New Zealand. And these rocket scientists, they can't work in the US because this law prohibits them. So they're getting like super much international talent and at New Zealand prices, which is a lot cheaper than US. And that seems to be a very, very big moat for Rocket Lab that other companies don't have access to. And I don't know if you guys also caught that. I never understood how much of a moat this was for Rocket Lab.
That was news to me. Yeah. Dave, you might all, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, obviously, yeah, I didn't hear the interview yet, so don't know exactly what he said, but yes, that could be a benefit, but it can also very much be a double-edged sword because the security rules with ITAR dealing with, rockets, which basically can be used as ballistic missiles. So the other edge of that sword is the Kiwi employees of Rocket Lab are then not allowed to, from what I understand, like receive information from the American side and help with that. So it could be an advantage in small launch because they can hire all these people cheaply, but then there is a disadvantage.
True story. Yeah. Like the Archimedes cannot go back to New Zealand because it's like
they can't have New Zealanders working from New Zealand on Archimedes because it's considered, top secret, whatever potential weapons technology. It's my understanding.
Yeah.
Could that be problematic for Neutron trying to get outside of the States then? Like down the road if they want to launch it in Australia, for example?
I mean, I think they can send the rocket itself to launch, but I don't know
not send the instructions.
Yeah, something like that. Like they can't hire New Zealanders working in New Zealand to build in like an American rocket because then the knowledge will. Anyway, you'd have to like dive deep into all the ITAR rules.
Yeah, and I heard something that they're going to loosen the ITAR rules because it's like I read something about it that it's deemed to be very impractical as it is, and the engineers are very tight-lipped because none of them want to even risk, because I think you can go to prison and be like super fined if you say a little bit too much. So I wouldn't want to be a Rocket Lab engineer speaking with your New Zealand counterpart and accidentally slipping up and then 10 years in prison or something. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so then the next thing. So we've got a $1 billion backlog, and we are trying to turn that into a $2 billion backlog. So my other big investment is Palantir, and Palantir is working with the government. And I have seen there firsthand that, the government contracts, they come in waves and it's very not predictable. And sometimes it's very quiet. And then you get a huge government contract. And on the interview, it really sounded like Adam is fully expecting to get more and similar contracts like the SDA. And the way he kind of said that, like we double the backlog every year. So we went from like 200 million, then 400 million, then we went to $1 billion, and now it's time to go to 2 billion. That was super bullish to my ears. What was your guys' thought on this one?
Yeah, I'm hoping we get more SDA-like contracts. Like that was nice to see. I'm sure more are. I don't know. Like it seems like we're just getting started as far as that. Like
he even said that the government is their hockey stick, right? And he said he said it on many different interviews that it's like the government is hockey sticking for them. And I'm like, he must be. Because, like we're in the dark, like for us, like they got the SDA contract and that's it. But for him to make that statement, he must see certain things that are coming. So can it be the lane 1 of the tranche 3 of the NSSL, or did they miss that now that Neutron is?
It sounded like he was talking more towards space systems, like more like satellite manufacturing. That was how I took that.
Yeah, I'd agree. even going back to the earnings call when they were saying they're looking to like try to get more contracts similar size to that SDA deal, which is, over 500 million. So yeah, I think that would be more on the space system side, which would be very exciting if it does happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So is it just me, or I feel like any day we can wake up to a tweet from Rocket Lab that, we have a new $500 million contract. And this is why I don't dare to write call options on my, on
Covered
my
calls.
position. Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you also feel that there is like something, or like some things major in the pipeline coming down at any moment?
I mean, like, I didn't listen to this interview, but it sounds like it, especially if he was being so confident in doubling the backlog again. I was kind of curious about this, and I did sort of ask, because I was like, okay, how much growth can Space Systems have? Do they have capacity for more contracts of that size? And it sounds like it's not that expensive to scale it up compared to Neutron. They just need like more clean rooms and stuff, which, isn't super expensive compared to building a rocket. So hopefully.
Yeah, that was a very good question. And yeah. All right. So then I think we go to the last thing is because of the delay of Neutron. So they were saying that the budget is going to be between 250 to 300 million. And he said that because of this delay, it will probably be 300 million. And I guess that's not nice to see, but he still said that all the money that they have raised, they're planning to use in the M&A. And that also what was interesting is that he thinks that for 3 years more, they're going to be tweaking the rocket. So just curious what your guys' take on this is, like how bearish is that for the company? Because technically it sounds like we're incurring a 50 million unplanned cost, which is quite a lot for Rocket Lab.
I mean, they were always kind of saying 250 to 300. So I think now we're looking at, around 300 or maybe a little higher. But I mean, I'm not that upset. Like, I challenge you to find a rocket of this size with a budget like lower than this. Like, Relativity is raising another $1 billion. I mean, if you have any idea how much ULA has spent on Vulcan, it's massive. So I'm not particularly upset, especially now that we have pictures of Archimedes and like we can see some progress. A few weeks ago, when I didn't know where the progress was, I was a little more, what's going on.
And I'm inclined to think that with this being pushed out, and especially too if we are considering acquisitions, it seems like I mean, we can't rule out more debt or another raise or something, probably once Neutron fires a time or two. Because like as it is now, their cash burn is like 65 million a quarter. Granted, that'll come down. Well, I was going to say it'll come down once Neutron is running, but with these new block upgrades and whatnot, maybe that extends a little bit further to the right. But it seems right now that we have cash to get us to mid-2026, and whether Neutron will be profitable by then, I guess that's TBD. And granted, that is without any acquisitions on top of that. So we, have another acquisition or two for, 50 to $100 million. That'll probably bring us to the end of 2026. All things considered, I guess.
Yeah, that's my other fear. So any day we can wake up to a very big contract, and any day we can wake up to we're doing another capital raise minus 20% on the stock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I would like to see the acquisitions, because I mean, we're seeing the impact, right? Where they just subcontracted to 5 companies a portion of their $500 million deal with SDA. I don't think we know the numbers on how much they're having these other companies, having to pay them. But I don't want to see all 300 million going to acquisitions, because then we'll kind of be in the same boat where I felt like we were before. And yeah, it was a little uncomfortable maybe.
Yeah. Cool. So that was all from this conference. I think that was interesting. And then the only other thing that I have is not even Rocket Lab related, is that it's early May, or mid-May, and Falcon 9 has completed its 50th mission for the year, which is an insane cadence. Like, it looks like they're easily going to do around 120 if things continue this way. Do you guys think this is a positive, negative? It's like showing what the future can be, or is it that they're like just gaining an edge that is more and more unbeatable?
I'd just say, hats off to SpaceX. It's incredibly impressive. And I think they have really kind of carried the space industry for quite a while. So like, if Falcon wasn't around, like, there'd probably be no Amazon Kuiper. There wouldn't be a lot of these other constellations under discussion if there was no SpaceX. So in a lot of ways, they're growing the whole space industry, which should hopefully be good for Rocket Lab as well. Like, having said that, of course, they will be competing with Falcon head to head with Neutron. But I think, overall, it's probably like, I think even Peter Beck has said, like, they probably wouldn't have existed without SpaceX. So, I'll take it. I think it's a great vehicle.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. And they're aiming for, what was it, 150 for the year?
Yeah. I think, I'm not sure if it's this year that they're aiming for 150. I think it's more like 120 or 30, but still, I think that's like a launch every 3 days. That's a very crazy cadence. And it's not even like Astra was planning to launch 300 of a very small rocket, right? Like, this is a beast that is flying. Yeah. 144 is the target. Thank you.
144.
Thank you.
I mean, they're on track. We're like a third of the way through the year, 50 launches so far.
Yeah.
Looking good so far.
It's pretty crazy. Cool. So this was all the news for the week. So how are you guys feeling about Rocket Lab as for catalysts on the stock price? Because it feels like it was very negative at one point. Like, we went down to 350, and I guess now that the engine is shown, and maybe there is more positive sentiment about the stock, but just curious, what do you think happens from here? Like, do we go up, down, sideways?
I mean, always risky to try and predict that. I feel like we're not headed back to where we were, 3.6, whatever. But beyond that, I can never say with this company. Like, even back a year ago when they jumped to like 6, 7, 8, I didn't see that one coming either. And I'm bullish. I was like, what is causing this? And I didn't know at the time. So yeah. What do you think, Scott?
I really don't know. Kind of same with what you're saying, Dave. I'm just like, it's like short-term price predictions are just such a gamble. Like, I'd want to say down, but I also have no real reason to. I mean, like, there's the obvious, like, comparing it to the NASDAQ price to sales, but then it's like, well, you can't really value a company based on sales alone, right? There's so much more to it.
Yeah. So
I don't know. I like 350 and 550 would probably surprise me equal amounts, like that's like with no news, I guess.
I'm just kind of curious because I guess you're sort of our resident bear-ish kind of person. Do you ever worry that like it won't drop as much as you want and you won't be able to accumulate as much as you would like to?
I'm not worried about it.
No?
Like,
okay.
No, it's like I'm at the point, like, I have a comfortable enough position that if it if it goes down, okay, and if it rips from here, okay, like, I'm fine either way. It's like in the early days with Tesla, I'm just like, oh, I got to add more, and like, sure, that was great and all, but like, kind of zooming out, it's like there's an infinite amount of companies, there's an infinite amount of possibilities, and there's always going to be the bears to the bulls. So it's like there's plenty of opportunity in the market, and if I miss the boat, well, not even miss the boat, if I'm not in enough of the boat with Rocket Lab, then like, I really don't mind.
You're a very calm investor, very very mature. I get I get FOMO sometimes when I think about Rocket Lab. Like it's funny
Worst
because
enemy.
Sorry.
I just feel like it's the investor's worst enemy.
Yeah,
reminds me
yeah,
back
yeah.
in like 2021, 2020, when everything was going crazy. That had like no, companies with no revenue.
Yeah, like
And
my problem is that the more we study this company, like I feel like it just gets better and better, and like the more you understand like what modes they have, and like the more you study about it, it's like it just keeps being better for me.
Yeah,
But,
I think Scott is right though. Like, let's not blind ourselves to other opportunities out there. Like AI seems to be a game changer, and there's a lot of there's other things too. So.
Plus, it's going to be like a pretty chaotic year, I'd imagine, or like not even a year, like the next 6 months, just with the market kind of being uncertain of like probably I hate to get political, but you kind of have to in some regards. But like, it seems like everything's swinging to the right, and even in that period, like even though it's kind of it seems like a no-brainer at this point. Even just that like uncertainty over the next 6 months might cause the market to be a little bit skittish. But I think that like as soon as honestly either side is like in place and people like, okay, so no civil war, then they might just kind of be like, okay, you dump everything back in and let's rip. So I'm just being patient. I like the next 6 months might be weird. So just ready for anything.
Yeah, it's possible.
This comment is funny. Scott is the bear bull, Dave is the bull, Vince is the bull.
That's good.
By the way, if you keep using this bearish bull phrase, I think I need a fee because I feel like
Really?
I came up with that. So
I like it. Yeah.
By the way, I found like an actual Rocket Lab bear. I don't know if you guys saw. There was someone who commented on Twitter that like this guy asked Peter Beck who is Neutron for and who is the customer for it, and he like tweaked and twerked for 4 minutes not answering his question. I don't know if you saw this tweet.
I saw that tweet. Yeah,
it was like I checked up on the guy. He seems to be like a European space something. I want to do more research on him because he seems to think that Starlink is going to kill everyone, and there's no competition with Falcon 9, and there's no more constellations coming, and the outlook on space is very bleak. So I have never seen like an actual bear on Rocket Lab. It was just like, SpaceX is better or some other companies better, but Rocket Lab is all right. But this guy seemed to be one. So maybe I should have him on the channel.
Honestly, yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. Cool, guys. I think this wraps it up for this week. I really enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for coming. Any last words you guys want to get in?
Nope. All good.
All right.
See you guys next time. Thanks for watching.
Yeah. So we see what happens next week. Any day we can wake up to a new contract or a new capital raise. One is plus 20%. The other one is minus 20%.
Or any day now we might get a tweet for showing Archimedes engine firing.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that will be like a plus 20% day on the... Or it's going to be Rocket Lab style and be like minus 15%.
I was just about to say, maybe it's like the launch and it just plunges after that.
Yeah, I worry it's going to be a sell the news kind of moment.
I just realized something. Like the stock price has been tanking, and we just had a period with no launches, and then the stock price literally like went from 3.5 to 4.5, and we're getting a launch in a few days. Maybe that starts a new downtrend. That would be...
We'll see.
Yeah. Anyways, thanks you guys for being here. Have a nice evening and see you guys next week.
See ya.